Welcome back. In this one, I'm going to be exploring a topic that is very critical in CSS, and that is a topic that we refer to as positioning. So how positioning works in CSS is that you are able to position elements in relation to other elements on your document. So I am going to add some section here. I can just add it something maybe somewhere here, so that is going to help us to explore this, because I want to give it colors that we are going to use to see exactly where we are attaching our document. So I'm going to say here div class equals, I can just call it parent, and inside this parent I am going to have 3 children. So div class equals, I can just call it child1, and then I'm going to have child2 and child3. So copy this, 2 and then 3. All right, so I have a parent, I have child1 and child2 and child3. If I refresh this, nothing shows up here. So let me go to my CSS and write some CSS. So I have parent, so I can come here and do class of parent. I want a background color of, I can do blue in the parent. That one also is not going to give me anything. Don't worry about that, I will show you why. Then I will do child1, child2 and child3. Let me copy this from here, child1, child2 and child3. I'll paste and then I'll edit this 2 and finally 3. Okay, child1 I want it to be red, child2 I want this to be maybe green, and child3 I would like to be yellow. Refresh, nothing. Why? Because the content is empty. You don't have anything to display on the page. So we can just go ahead and do, for instance, in child1 we can do something like padding. Remember what we are doing with padding, and I can do 20 pixels, and when you do that, you'll see that child1 will appear. Okay, then I can do the same for all the others. So I can do this for parent, I can also do this for this and this. So paste. Now when you refresh, you have your parent and then you have 3 children inside. I would also like the parent to have a width so that it is fixed, and I would like this to be 300 pixels. Now refresh, and this is the element. Now I want us to start doing positioning on this item so that we can understand what exactly happens when we use position attributes in CSS. So the first one that I'm going to show you is what is called position relative, and therefore in this first child I am going to say child1 position relative. And the position relative, when you refresh, looks like nothing has happened, but then there is something that position relatives helps you to do. It allows you to add attributes such as top, left, bottom and all that to your element. So I can now go here and say something like top 10 pixels to position it from the top of my document, and you can see when we do that, the element is completely extracted. Let me just add this so that you can see what has happened. You can see this one is like it is extracted from the document, and it is now moving on my on top of other documents. So if I do 0, you can see when I did 20, it has been pushed 20 elements down, so it is covering this other element here. If I do 40, you can see this one has completely covered the child2 element. What about when I do 0? When I do 0, this one gets back to its position. So I can also do the same for right. So I can also do right, and now right gives me this. So it pushes this element 10 pixels from the right. Okay, so position relative allows you to position elements, to move elements, or to add attributes to it, such as right, left, bottom and top. Okay, nice. That is relative. How about when I want to move it to absolute? We also have absolute positioning. Now refresh this document. Look at what absolute has done. It's like it has completely eliminated this document, this element from our document. So this has completely removed it from the document flow. So how the document and the browser was understanding this thing before now has been changed completely by this absolute positioning. And now if I add a top attribute here to our element of 10 pixels, just look at what happens. When I save, you can see that this one has been removed, like I was saying, from the document flow, because what we're expecting is that here we have a parent, and you can see here we have a parent, and this parent has 3 children. But when we added a position of absolute to our first child, it's like this child has been disowned by the parent. But why does that happen? Because we expected that when we do top of 10 pixels, it's like when we had relative here. You see, when we had the relative was moving this document in relation to the parent. Okay, so we have 10 pixels here. All right, we had 10 pixels there. You see, when we had the relative position, but now absolute position moves it completely outside. Why is that? This is because our parent div here has an attribute of static, and therefore how absolute positioning works is that it will only position elements static absolutely in relation to other documents that are not in a static position. So this one has positioned our div 10 pixels absolute to the main or the HTML document. So if you wanted it to be positioned 10 pixels absolute to I mean if you wanted it to be positioned absolutely to the parent that you have here, then you have to make sure that the parent also has the position absolute. So if we come back to our parent attribute here and do position and do position absolute, look at what happens. Here we have position as absolute, and then the child is also in position absolute, and the top of 10, when you refresh, this element is going to be now aligned or positioned 10 pixels absolute to the parent. So check this, and yes, there you go. So this one now has been positioned relative absolute to the parent. Nice. But then notice that the parent also has been moved across in our document. The parent has again been placed absolutely to the document. So you can see now that it is like it is on top of my other paragraph tag here. So that is what absolute positioning does. We have another positioning called absolute positioning. So if I change my not absolute but fixed positioning, if I change my child one to fixed positioning, let's see what happens. Refresh, and again the fixed attribute has started ignoring the parent again. But then this time fixed is very different, because fixed positioning has absolutely nothing to do with the parents. And then the other thing to note is that it stays at a fixed position even when you scroll. So if I scroll this document, you can see that my div here, my child one, does not move. So when I scroll the document, it completely ignores the other document and stays at one point. So this is something that you may need to do to use a lot in your coding career. Nice. The other and last positioning that I want to show you here, because I am not going to be talking so much about static position, because static basically is what is applied to documents when you create them for the first time. I want to show you something called sticky positioning. And sticky positioning is like fixed position and absolute position combined. So when I refresh this one now is in a sticky position, but something very interesting happens. This one is in absolute position when the document has not been scrolled to the top, but when this document scrolls to the top, then the sticky position changes and becomes fixed position, so it will not move. So when I scroll this document, you can see that my document had stopped moving. Let me just add this so that you can see the parent. I'm going to say height of 200 vertical heights. I can do something like that. Refresh, and wow, nice. Yeah, so you can see now our parent is quite long and we have a long scrolling list here. Notice what happens to our first child, the child 1, which we gave a positioning sticky. So right now when the document is at this position, it is scrolling because it is in an absolute position. When I scroll and this element hits the top of the page, it is going to change from an absolute position to a fixed position, because like I said, position sticky is like a combination of absolute and fixed. So let's scroll this and notice that our element has been left at the bottom. So this one is something that you may be needing to use a lot in your web design or web development career. So that is it for today. Do some exercise maybe with the other children about the positioning that we have in CSS, and I'll see you in the next course.